So today's recipe is what I would call a salmon sandwich spread, although if you're familiar with my advice to most people around eating, you're not going to want to put this on bread. Now traditionally this way of preparing food is called rillette, and from classic French cuisine, and rillette is usually made with slowly cooked pork with a lot of salt, a lot of extra fat, and then used kind of like pate, and then it's actually referred to by some cooks as poor man's pate. This falls into a class of meals that I would call ready meat, which is basically some protein mixed with some spices and some fat that you could then add to something, say like a salad, a stir fry, some steamed vegetables, something like that. Because again, you know, as a doctor, my recommendation for people is eat mostly plants, supplement that with protein, supplement that again with some healthy fats, preferably fats that aren't wrecked by overcooking or processing. So what we're going to make again is the salmon sandwich spread. So I'm going to start with about 4 cups of leftover salmon. You can get that obviously from canned salmon or leftover roast salmon, something like that. The only challenge with canned salmon would be a good amount of the salmon oil is probably in the capsules you're buying at the health food store. So again, 4 cups of leftover salmon, about a cup of hopefully healthy homemade mayonnaise. If not, try and get a mayonnaise that is full fat, actually has eggs and egg yolks in it, and preferably would be made with olive oil instead of canola oil. But yeah, unless you're making it yourself, you're going to be left with what's out there. Then there's probably about a half cup of chopped up green onions, a little bit of crunch, lots of flavor. Half a cup of diced up dill pickles, optional if you're not a big fan of dill pickles, but more crunch, more flavor, and a bit of an acid that balances out some of the richness of the mayonnaise and the richness of the salmon. And then about 4 cloves if you like a lot of garlic, 2 cloves if you're a little less in love with garlic. But again, something that has a pungent flavor that's going to cut through a bit of the mayonnaise and that rich earthy taste of the salmon. And then a squeeze handful of dill. And the reason you want to squeeze it or roll it between your hands is to basically crush it, break it up, and release the flavor in the oils. Just for example, you can also take things like dill and garlic and other pungent spices or flavorful herbs and just flatten it out with your knife to just break out the oils. Now of course that's going to be a little color on the cutting board, but the idea now is the flavor is going to mix in and infuse more deeply with all of the other food, especially with the mayonnaise. And of course the idea here is to make this as yummy as possible. So we'll stir that up. So if you're using canned salmon, I think a good ratio would be a 1/4 cup of mayonnaise per can if you're looking for a fairly rich rillette or salmon spread, and about half that if you're just for some reason still feeling that mayonnaise in some way might cause you some problems. If you've been to my website or seen some of my other videos, you'll probably have heard me say that mayonnaise is medicine. Now, that's a funny thing to say out loud if that's the first time you've heard it, but take a moment and think about what's in mayonnaise. You have an egg yolk full of healthy fats, fat-soluble vitamins, lecithin, other things that are actually fairly good for your liver, gallbladder, and your brain. You have some lightly flavored olive oil, maybe some grapeseed oil. Highly unsaturated oils is very good for you. You have maybe some Dijon mustard, maybe some apple cider vinegar, pinch of salt, things like that that are basically whipped up. Now when you mix the oil and the egg yolk, it goes through a process called emulsification, which basically breaks up the oil molecules into tiny, tiny drops. Now that's actually the job of the bile of your gallbladder. So as it turns out, healthy mayonnaise, preferably homemade using really good food, is medicine because it's a pre-digested, healthy source of really good fats, really good nutrients. So here I've got my basic salmon rillette, salmon sandwich spread if you want to say it that way. basically it's a lot of protein and some healthy fat. And at this point I have a choice. I could chop up a whole bunch of other plants and just mix it in here and make basically you know, a very enriching salad. Or I could take some of this, sit it on top of a salad. One thing I also like to do is wrap it up in lettuce leaves, maybe wrap it up in nori rolls like sushi, but just sushi without the rice. Other things that are typically going to be added to this at this point would be some spices and other flavorings. So one nice flavor that goes with salmon and dill is a bit of lime juice. Now if you put too much in here, it's going to make this a bit messy, so just a bit. That's probably a tablespoon. Another thing that goes really good with lemon, lime, dill, salmon is mustard. So I have here Dijon mustard, organic of course, and say a tablespoon and a half. You have to have some fun when you're cooking. If you measure everything, I don't know, it just doesn't feel as confident or maybe as wild. So I'll mix those in, make sure that the consistency is where I want it. Okay, that's nicely stirred up. So, salt. This is of course really good sea salt, or trace minerals that way. And I'd say a tablespoon, maybe a bit less. Depends on your relationship with salt, of course. Freshly cracked pepper. Pepper is nice when it's freshly cracked. It's more aromatic. Again, that's going to mean the flavors are going to infuse into any oils around it much more quickly. And typically they'll stay in the oil. And I kind of like the flavor of pepper with this, so just a little more. Okay. Now, I usually add just a little bit of ginger powder to this recipe. Probably a teaspoon overall. It adds kind of a nice warming aftertaste, and again it's got a sharp, pungent flavor, so it's going to really help with the fact there's a lot of fat in here. And this is some cumin, and probably the same amount or more, probably a teaspoon and a half. And it adds kind of a rich, earthy, slightly pungent flavor. Hard to mistake cumin really for anything else. And one of the reasons I'm adding cumin is that part of the rillette that I'm making, or the spread that I'm making, is going to be going for another recipe that you'll see in a bit. Kind of an hors d'oeuvre that's very popular. So that flavor really enriches that recipe, but it tastes good no matter what. So there we go. A little bit of salmon sandwich bread. Now, probably a funny story, well maybe for me. I like this a lot. With the medical training I have, I know that this is basically medicine. And on occasion, not very often, but on occasion, I'll actually do basically a fast, or a single food fast, where this is all I'm going to eat. Small amounts, probably a tablespoon every couple of hours for about 4 days. And it's just a really, really enriching tonic for your kidneys. Nothing else is going into your body, nothing is messing with the balance of your blood sugar. All you're getting is fat-soluble vitamins, protein, and I think if I would say when I'm doing my little 4-day salmon rillette fast, I have some more plants in here just for the fiber. But again, what you do with this is really only limited by your imagination, and it's really good. So keep cooking well, and then you'll stay well. Have a great day.